Welcome to the cockpit. My name is Ryan, and I'll be your pilot today. Boys and girls, I want to talk a little bit about Wildcard Weekend, break down some of the games, what it means for the New York Jets, and our futures in the AFC. Before we do that, I do want to acknowledge our sponsor of the channel, Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to try and win a little bit of money throughout these playoffs, use promo code JETS247. Get yourself a 100% deposit match up to $100. I've had a lot of fun with it. Unfortunately, we're not going to be betting on our Jets anymore, but at least you can try to win a few bucks off some of these other teams that are in the playoffs, as well as a whole bunch of other sports. So if you want to support the channel, support the sponsors of the channel. I don't get anything from it as far as like kickbacks for whatever you guys do. It's just purely you guys sign up. They like sponsoring the channel. So hopefully this continues here. But I want to get into a few different things in here. Make sure you hit that like button on the way in. I see J-Boy in the chat. He says, oh, man, takeoff time. R&R says, let's party. Thumbs up. Harlan, what's good, dude? J-Boy says he loves the shirt. Thank you. Tribe Called Quest. Gulio says, what are your thoughts on Bo Nix? Ooh, I'll get into that maybe in a little bit. Let's do a little bit more of the recap of the Wildcard Weekend, and then we'll get into that. And Harlan says, fans, hit the like button, support the channel. Thank you so much, Harlan. You're the man. Appreciate you guys tuning in. All right, let's go game by game as we go through this. Wild Wave, what's up? I see you. Ali, Blitz Crew, Brian. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's go game by game and kind of break down what this sort of meant overall. So Browns-Texans, this game was not close whatsoever. This was a funny story too, by the way. I'm watching like the first, maybe it's an hour of the game, and then my power goes out. I'm in the sticks. It does not take much for the power to go out. Someone, well, put it this way. We had a lot of snow, then we had a lot of rain, and then we had a lot of wind. So trees were down everywhere. And power got knocked out. So we're like, all right, we're going to go to Becca's house. Becca's mom's house. Then she lost power. So all right, that's not good. So we went out to eat, wound up watching. Thank God I have YouTube TV. I'm able to like play it on like an app. So that was handy. But Texans dropping a 45 spot on the Browns. Joe Flacco did not look very good. Had a few pick sixes in the game. And man, I'll tell you what, the Texans came to play from the very first whistle. D'Amico Ryans had that team ready to play. 3 and out, I believe, was the first series for the Browns, and then it just never got better from there for the Browns. And look, I'm jealous. I want what the Texans have right now. I mean, you look at how the Dolphins and how the Texans have flipped things around by hitting on an early pick and then trading away a big asset. On the Texans side of things, they traded for Laramie Tunsil, and the Dolphins basically rebuilt their entire team with the pieces they got from the Laramie Tunsil trade. Jalen Waddle, then they trade back and they get the extra picks in the 49ers trade. They've really accumulated a whole bunch of stuff over in Miami. The Texans, on the other hand, trade away Deshaun Watson. They get a bunch of assets. They get a new head coach, and all of a sudden they hit on the number 2 overall pick that they didn't even want. They wanted Bryce Young, and they lucked into C.J. Stroud, and C.J. Stroud is a dog. He has been absolutely awesome. He has like a perfect passer rating in the playoffs, and it goes to show you just how fast this can turn around if you're the New York Jets and you just hit on the pick. If the Jets had hit on Zach Wilson, we would be having an entirely different conversation right now. I don't think the Jets are as far off as maybe, like, of course, as fans, we're like, okay, we should have been in the Super Bowl conversation with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. Then we saw like all the things that went on with the offensive line and the wide receivers, and we're like, all right, well, maybe we're further away than we thought. They got a bunch of young guns down in Houston, and they're doing just fine. They're able to figure it out. So I have some faith that the Jets can turn this around in one offseason. But man, I would be lying if I didn't say I wasn't jealous of the Texans and D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud and everything they're doing over there. They have a ton of cap space. They are going to be a very highly attractive spot for free agents this offseason. I think it's going to be difficult to try and compete with them when they have that much firepower locked up in a rookie contract for the next 4 years. It's impressive. Their window is just opening, and I think they're going to be fun to pull for. I'll be honest, expansion team never had a Super Bowl. I'm pulling for them on the AFC side. Now, I did take Ravens 49ers as my Super Bowl prediction, but obviously, would like to see the Lions get in, would like to see Texans get in. That sort of stuff makes me kind of happy. But yeah, so Browns, look, what are they going to do? Joe Flacco turned into a pumpkin. 300-yard game after 300-yard game after 300-yard game, and then pumpkin status coming to the playoffs. They had so many injuries. This was just sort of inevitably what was bound to happen, barring like some sort of miraculous Nick Foles-esque run to the Super Bowl. I think it was probably a long shot for them to overcome all the injuries that they had this season. They still got a bright future. Deshaun Watson coming back. How are they going to look next year? But yeah, this game was not very close. Then this evening, had one of our buddies hook me up with a Peacock password. Thank you very much. I won't say your name on stream just in case you get in trouble for that. But thank you very much for hooking me up with the login for Peacock. I was able to watch Dolphins at Chiefs, and man, it was sub-zero temperatures, and the Dolphins forgot to get on the plane. 7 points was all they could muster against the Kansas City Chiefs, 26-7. And Kansas City, look, I'll be honest, I was not like riding high on Kansas City heading into the playoffs. I didn't realize how good their defense was down the stretch here. Number 2 overall defense. Very impressive. Dolphins, Tua does not look good. And now there's going to be a bunch of discussion. And their fan base is, I don't know if it's as split as I'd like it to be, but it seems like there is a lot of fans that are like, we need Tua on the 5th-year option. Do not extend him. And meanwhile, all Jet fans are like, yeah, extend him all you want. He's got the weak arm. He can't cut through the wind. Is he going to be able to win you the games that he needs to win if you got to travel to Kansas City, if you got to travel to Pittsburgh, if you got to travel to Baltimore, New York, New England, all these North teams in the AFC? There's a lot of firepower in the northern part of the AFC. And it's just fascinating to see because I don't trust Tua at all. I mean, now you could do a lot worse than Tua for sure, but Tua at like $40+ million a year, if I'm the Dolphins, I sign up for it immediately. Give him 60, front load that baby. No, yeah, look, if I'm the Dolphins, I don't think you do it. I think you have to consider some other quarterback options or at least some type of competition. This is not a good spot for the Dolphins to be in. I love it. I am smitten with this. This is 24 years this franchise is without a win in the playoffs. Makes me feel good. It's the longest active playoff win drought in the NFL. Even though we have the longest active playoff drought, I would like to believe not winning at least a game in the playoffs is almost as equivalent as not making the playoffs at all. You barely showed up. You got on the bus, and that was about it. So the Dolphins, tons of injuries. This game's probably different if you take, all their guys and you plug them back in, but every team's got injuries. You got to be able to overcome it. And there were guys running open. I think Tua was definitely not. I think Tua was the biggest person to blame in this particular game. I don't think they had a shot, and I don't think Tua gave him a shot. I don't understand how he's not able to move. I don't know if that was something from the hip injury from college, but man, he just never scrambles and never tries to run for first downs. And I feel like that's such a dynamic part of a quarterback's game. You either need to have a big arm, or you got to be able to extend plays, or you could do both. And Tua can't do any of that. He could throw an accurate ball, and that's about it. But cutting through the wind or throwing a really deep bomb, you're kind of like in between on the bomb stats. I've seen him throw some nice deep throws, but by and large, doesn't really like put a ton of zip on the ball. Not super mobile. I think the Dolphins are probably feeling a little bit of a way here. Little bit of a way. Kansas City, heading into the next round. Kansas City versus Buffalo is going to be a lot of fun. This time it's in Buffalo. Then Sunday, we come back. We get Packers putting a beat down on Dallas, 48-32. This game was not as close as the score indicates. Jordan Love looks like a dog. Dude, the Packers just have the formula figured out. Hall of Fame quarterback, first round pick, let him sit for 3 years. Wash, rinse, repeat. They've now done it twice. Jordan Love looks legit. Matt LaFleur knows exactly what he's doing up in Green Bay. That team looks like they're believing. And this is a team that, like, there's going to be people that are saying like, oh, Aaron Rodgers couldn't win with that type of team. There's a lot of players that came into this year, the weapons in particular, that Rodgers did not have last year that are being major contributors this year. So I'm not as concerned with like Rodgers couldn't compete with this team last year the way Jordan Love can this year. And that's fine. I don't mind if Jordan Love winds up being a top 10 quarterback and Aaron Rodgers is like 15th best quarterback. That's not what I'm really looking for. I'm not looking for top 5 Aaron Rodgers. I mean, obviously, if we could get that, that would be fantastic. But with our defense, I think you can win with top 5, especially with Breece Hall and a revamped offensive line. I'm not overly concerned from that side of things. Now, the Packers, things are going to get a lot more interesting moving forward. With Dallas, are they going to can McCarthy? Do they wind up having a sale on players? They got a lot of free agents. They got contracts they got to work out. CeeDee Lamb needs a contract. They can either trade or cut him and save $17 million. I think currently they're over the cap by $40 million. $40 million for Dallas. Now you can restructure things and work things around, but you got to bring back Tyron Smith. You got there's some guys, Tony Pollard's a free agent, Michael Gallup's a free agent. There's a lot of people that you're going to have to try and consider. Is it worth retaining, or do you wind up moving on with a new head coach? Do you hit a soft reset? Do you move forward with Dak? He's going into last year of his contract. Dallas has a bunch of questions. Bill Belichick interviewed with the Falcons, but there's rumors maybe he winds up in Dallas. That would be really interesting how that team kind of performs in that capacity. I don't know. Tyron Smith is someone I wouldn't mind the Jets being able to pluck off the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, would you give up the number 10 pick for CeeDee and a monster contract? I loved CeeDee Lamb coming out. So if the plan was to take wide receiver at number 10, you might get me considering that. But yeah, dude, Green Bay's looking good. I like where Green Bay's headed right now. I'm jealous of where their team's at compared to what we've seen this past year. And right now it's feeling, very likely that the Packers won this trade, but that's without all the information that we have on the Jets side of things. So if things turn out better and the Jets go to the playoffs next year, 2 second-round picks to end your playoff drought and have a shot at a Super Bowl, I'm all right with that. But Cowboys, man, you guys are in a rough spot. Moving on from the Packers-Cowboys, we got the best game of the weekend. That was Lions against the Rams. That Detroit stadium was so loud. It was so rocking. That was a lot of fun to watch. Now, admittedly, I actually did take the Rams in our Pick'em League for this. I thought the emotion might get to the Lions here. And I thought it was going to at the very end. When they wound up accepting the holding penalty to push the Rams out of field goal range, I thought that was a very risky move. I thought the Rams were going to get another shot to try and get that first down. Wound up, I think it was an incomplete pass. So it ended up working out in their favor. But man, I really like Detroit. And how do you not have a soft spot for Detroit being a Jet fan? You see Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator. You're looking at a team that was picking 2 slots ahead of the Jets just 2 years ago, and they just turned it around. They hit on all their picks. Penei Sewell. They trade the quarterback, Stafford, to go get Goff. They get extra picks. They hit on Penei Sewell. They hit on Laporta. They hit on Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs. Over and over again, this team is just making the right selections. And if you hit on those early picks and hit in a big way, it goes so far. And you can even say the same thing about the Rams. They've been trading away first-round picks forever. They might have had the best draft in the NFL this past year. Nakua, their defensive linemen have been awesome. Kyron Williams, the running back. You got to hit on your draft picks because that is where you win games. This is how you get to this point in the season. It's because you have cheap guys on contracts that are tied to your team. You're not trying to overpay to attract someone else that had success in another system and bringing them into your system. That's the downside of free agency. You're overpaying for talent, and you're also moving a guy from a situation that he was successful in to a new situation where he is hopeful to be successful in. I cannot stress how important the NFL draft is, and the Jets just have not been very good at it outside of the 2022 draft. Now we're starting to see maybe some players turn it around a little bit. We don't know what to expect about 2023 draft yet. Tittman looks like he's going to hit. McDonald didn't play enough snaps to know. And then Carter Warren, does he develop into a depth tackle? Can he wind up being a starter at some point? That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, dude, it's impressive to see what both these teams have done with their draft picks. And this was a fun game to watch. Matthew Stafford going back into Detroit. He got the boos coming into the stadium. I thought that the Lions came out fierce. Dan Campbell, like, that is an intense coach. That is all gas, no break. When I think of all gas, no break, I think of Dan Campbell. I'm not thinking of the Jets. I'm not thinking, like, the Jets, we finally break the streak of coming out of the bye week flat, and then we wind up having, like, still tail end of the season flat. Like, Dan Campbell, I can't imagine what has happened to the New York Jets the last 2 years ever happening to the Detroit Lions over there with Dan Campbell. So I'm really impressed with them. The Lions are going to be my heart pick for the rest of the year. I want the Lions to be the team to win the Super Bowl if they can. I have projected the 49ers to beat the Ravens as my pick, but man, I'm impressed with where the Rams and Lions both finished out the season. I think the Rams can hold their heads high. I mean, they were not in the playoff conversation until like the very tail end of the season. So props to them on a upswing season that was projected to be a downswing. And the Lions, look, you guys are still rocking. Then last night, we got to see the Steelers-Bills. This game got snowed out. You see all the like footage coming out of Buffalo. You got Bills Mafia riding down with these black tubes that they're shoveling snow down on the stadium. Really cool. I've never actually noticed how they do that. They have these big half-circle tubes that go the entire way down like a section, and people are shoveling, throwing it on there, and the snow slides down onto the field, and the big dump trucks, or bulldozers or whatever, move it. Very cool to see. But you got Bills Mafia going no shirts, sliding down the tubes. They were paying fans $20 an hour plus free food and beverage to go shovel snow. If the Jets had the opportunity to do that, I would be first in line. That would be so much fun to be there with all your like Jet fan friends. You feel like you're doing something for the team. And then for the Bills to play the way they played just makes it so much sweeter for Buffalo. And look, the Steelers clearly did not they should not have been there. They look completely outgunned. Mason Rudolph just is not a quarterback that should be starting in this league at all. Mike Tomlin's getting asked the question at the end of the game, hey, what's your contract status? All that good stuff. And he just walks right out. I wish our guys would do that to some of our media sometimes. That'd be kind of nice to see. But Mike Tomlin, is his future in doubt, which feels insane to me because he's never had a losing season. But I think he's only had 5 playoff wins? 3 playoff wins? It's not a whole lot. The Bills, on the other hand, with Josh Allen, how are you feeling about them? They now have Kansas City coming to town. Are you feeling good about them? Someone showed me a stat the other day, and I have to go back and I'll have it for Talking Jets. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was. But it was like the starting quarterbacks that the Bills have faced in all of Josh Allen's playoff wins are something awful. It's like Mason Rudolph and like backup quarterback after backup quarterback. Definitely not great. But yeah, look, the Bills 100% blew the doors off the Steelers. This was not a close game at all. And I think we all probably expected this. And then you round out the week with last night's game. Eagles versus Bucks. The Eagles look bad. They do not look good. They start the season off 10-1. Jets were the only team to beat them. We broke the formula for the rest of the NFL. They wind up winning, what was it, 1 game? I think they went 1-7 down the stretch. Insane that you can have such a juggernaut of a team and then just completely spiral out of controls. The tush push didn't work last night. Jason Kelce is now going to retire. What happens to Nick Sirianni? Does he wind up getting fired? There's a lot of players on that Eagles team that could end up leaving. Fletcher Cox could retire. Graham, the edge rusher, could retire. Lane Johnson, their right tackle, could retire. This Philadelphia team could look drastically different. They might be in some sort of weird soft rebuild mode. And then what's going on with Jalen Hurts? If there's any kind of like injury or something, it feels like something's going on behind the scenes with Jalen Hurts. And if there's like any sort of like major injury or something that's like nagging, it's all speculation from what I've heard. All speculation. But he did not look right the back half of this season. His fingers was all jacked up. He got banged. It was like all crooked. I don't know. Philly doesn't look good though. They didn't look good down the stretch. They didn't look good in the playoff game. Like, good for Baker. I was Broadway Baker when he was coming out. I was all about Baker. I wanted the Jets to get him. I didn't think, I thought for sure we were going to land him. I love the moxie. I love the fight. He took a few shots. He's playing with like bruised ribs or broken ribs or whatever it is. 32 points. Baker rolled the dice on himself. $5 million, I think, was his contract. Is that right? 1 year, $5 million, 1 year, $8 million? Whatever it was. I love myself some Broadway Baker. I felt like he got a raw deal on his way out in Cleveland. I thought it would have been better for Cleveland to keep him. He wanted to be there. Baker's just looking for a home. He balled out with the Rams a little bit last year. I hope he finds a home in Tampa Bay. Todd Bowles winning a playoff game. You saw his big smile. When does he ever show any kind of emotion on the sideline? He was grinning ear to ear, shit-eating grin from Todd Bowles on that sideline. I thought it was a hell of a game. And man, Tampa Bay looking pretty decent. Looking pretty decent. Let's hop into some of your comment questions that I saw in here. My godfather, Mr. Larry Mace. He says, go Texans. I'm rooting for the Texans. On the AFC side, I'd like to see a little underdog story from them. J-Boy says, the Dolphins got their ass kicked. Yes, they did. It felt great. It was wonderful. Couldn't have happened to a better team. Frank comes in, says, Mahomes can beat both AFC East teams, then hopefully lose to Stroud or Lamar is the best timeline. Yeah, if the Bills can wind up getting bounced by the Chiefs, I'd feel really good as a Jet fan. And then you wind up in this situation of, do the Texans beat the Chiefs? Or I feel like it's probably going to be the Ravens. As long as Lamar's healthy, Baltimore's going to be a tough out. I really think they're going to be hard to beat. Wild Wave says, we not really that far off, just need to have a good offseason. You got to fix the offensive line. Fixing the offensive line is paramount. I did release a video today, if you guys haven't seen it. It's the top 8 free agents that the Jets should be looking at in terms of offensive tackle. There's cuts in there, things of that nature that I think are going to become available. I go over the highlights, their injury history, contract expectations. I think you guys will like that with some of that analysis. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say in the comment section over there about that. Dakota says Baltimore over Houston, Kansas City over Buffalo. I do think that's probably how that goes. I don't necessarily feel it's a lock that Kansas City's over Buffalo. I think that's more of a coin flip game to me. Ali says Rodgers gives us at least 5 or 6 more wins. From this past year, it definitely feels like we would have won the Atlanta game, the Raider game, the first Patriot game, and then after that, it's a little speculative as far as the rest of the games go. Maybe you don't. The Chargers game was really a Zach loss, in my opinion. Like, you wind up having 2 fumbles that led directly to 17 points or 14 points. You had a sack that took away 3 points from the Jets. I don't know. I think we could win a lot more games with Rodgers. I think this team's not that far off to your point. Lions over Tampa Bay, says Dakota. I do think that's how it's going to be. That is a rematch for them on the NFC side. Harlan says, instead of picking Wilson when the Jets did, they should have stuck with Darnold and drafted an offensive lineman. They should have traded down. Like, even with Penei Sewell there, I don't know if I would have taken him over the 3 first-round picks that the 49ers would have offered to get Zach. Now, the issue is were you going to exercise Sam's 5th-year option? I think you probably do. Like ultimate hindsight. You trade down, you exercise Sam's 5th-year option. It still winds up being a bad deal for the Jets from a financial standpoint. But if you didn't, you're rolling into an offseason last year or 2 years ago where the top quarterback coming out was Kenny Pickett. So I think Sam Darnold in like a year in the San Francisco offense with Mike LaFleur probably would have looked a little bit better. But yeah, I think it was like 24 of 24 GMs had Zach Wilson as the number 2 overall quarterback. So it's hard to be too critical of it. Obviously hindsight's 2020. Tyson says Lions Texans would be cool. We got the wrong coach. D'Amico Ryan's a good coach. Hopefully Saleh can get it turned around here. Dakota says Packers Ravens Super Bowl for first time ever, or Buffalo Lions Super Bowl for the first time ever. First time ever. Packers Ravens. Like, you talking matchup? I'm a little confused. But Buffalo and the Lions, yeah, look, I don't want a division rival winning the Super Bowl. I thought Buffalo should have won a Super Bowl the last few years. But I would like the Lions to win. That would be my hope. Dakota says Tua deserves snowballs thrown at him. Yes, he does. J Nasty, JETS. Let's go any NFC team. King Blaze saying, TD, where you at? TD, Fins Talk, the Dolphins YouTuber, not having a good weekend. Not having a good weekend at all. All the Dolphins guys having a little bit of stress right now. Harlan saying, Dakota, Packers won the first 2 Super Bowls. Ravens won a Super Bowl. Buffalo is 0-4 in the Super Bowl. Detroit has never made it to a Super Bowl. Yeah, I was going to say Dakota's throwing me off a little bit. Not sure what you're talking about. Minion says, Cowboys are cursed in the playoffs. Yeah, the Jets have 2 more wins than the Cowboys do since their last Super Bowl in the playoffs. Thank you, Mark Sanchez. Jeremy says, remember the last time Green Bay did it and what happened to the quarterback they dumped? So we wound up getting Brett Favre. He got hurt with us after we were the number 1 team in the AFC. Probably would have won a Super Bowl if he stayed here for the 3 years. He didn't want to be here, though. He wound up leaving, going to Minnesota, and then almost got to a Super Bowl, but it was Bounty Gate that knocked him out of the NFC Championship game against the Saints. I'll take a little year 2 Aaron Rodgers, please. See how it all plays out. Wild Wave says, we listened to Peyton. That's Peyton Manning. And got Adam Gase. Yeah, no, not good. We don't want that. J-Boy, Lamb will be on a new team by draft night. Look, we're in a spot where you can get one of the top guys. So, for me to say I would give up number 10 for CeeDee Lamb is a little tough. I love CeeDee Lamb. I think he's 100% worth it. I think a team like us could use a CeeDee Lamb. I think we have the money to be able to extend him right now if you wanted to do that. I think he's absolutely elite. Him and Garrett Wilson would be scary together. But you could also go the cheaper route and get someone like O'Doon, someone like Bowers. You don't know if they're going to hit. That's the risk. But you save some of the financial capacity. And I don't know. It's tough when you bring in someone, give him a massive contract like CeeDee Lamb's going to get, and then have Garrett Wilson and then try to say like, oh yeah, we're going to give you the same or better deal. It's a little tough. Minion says, what about Eagles versus Buccaneers? I did say that. I already talked about it. Don't you worry. I'm catching up on chat, so I'll work my way through. Aunt Jet says, good morning. Hope everyone is doing well. Good morning to you, Aunt Jets. Always glad to have you around. Woody said Woody should not coach, is being fired. Y'all need to let it go. Yeah, no one's getting fired from the Jets, unfortunately. We are running it back for better or worse. We're going to see where it all plays out. Joe comes in and says, Ryan, pull up depth charts of all the remaining teams on our lads. 7 and 8 teams have 13 plus draft starters. So yeah, look, you got to have guys that are starting that you have drafted. You have to get that value. If you're bringing in free agents or if you're trading for guys or things like that, it's not going to work out. Most teams do draft their players or have undrafted free agents, coming in and helping out. Our offensive line, that's why I'm not so sure it's a deadlock that we're going to go offensive line in the first round. Because there's players that you hit on, whether it be a bargain bin free agent or a mid to late round pick. Usually there's like 2 guys on an offensive line that were not highly drafted. You got to be able to do that. So I'm not going to pull it up right now because I don't have the scene set up to do that. But not great for the New York Jets. Harlan says Bowers may be gone when the Jets are on the clock. So the nice thing about that is if Bowers is gone, that probably means one of Alt or Fashanu wound up falling to us, and I would take one of them. What's interesting is you could see offensive line go at a few different spots. You could see him go at the Cardinals because they lost DJ Humphries for the year with an ACL tear in week 17. I could see them drafting one. You could see the Chargers draft an offensive lineman. You could see the Titans draft an offensive lineman. You could see the Bears with their second pick draft an offensive lineman. So there's like 4 potential landing spots before the New York Jets that could go offensive line. I'm not saying all of them will because I think Marvin Harrison Jr. could go to Arizona. I think the Bears could trade down from number 9 to a team looking to jump the Jets. I could see that, but I do think 2 offensive linemen may go, and if 2 offensive linemen go before us, I think Bowers is going to fall to us. But I've really enjoyed watching his tape. He is an elite weapon and a good blocker as well. Aunt Jet says, I like Goff beating the team that gave up on him. Yeah, I always love a good comeback story. Dakota coming in says, Baltimore owns San Francisco forever. San Francisco defense can't handle Lamar at all. You think they'd be able to handle Josh Allen? Lamar's a different kind of cat. That's the thing. Like, Lamar's one of one. Josh Allen's pretty much one of one. But I would say, like, Cam Newton is of a similar style of player. Huge body, likes to use their legs, strong arm. I think Allen's the better quarterback from, like, an accuracy perspective. I'd have to go back and, like, actually look at that. But he's been really, really good. R&R says, how do we flip Huff for starting offensive lineman since we're not going to pay him? So I agree. I don't think the Jets are going to wind up paying Bryce Huff. The issue is going to end up being, what do the Jets do with him? Because the franchise tag is going to cost $24 million. That's the only way you're able to trade him. But once you give him the franchise tag, he's either going to sign it and lock in $24 million guaranteed, or he holds out and the Jets have $24 million locked up in their cap and they can't do anything unless they rescind the tag, or he winds up signing it and he's like offered a different contract by another team, or he decides to screw the Jets and say, hey, I'm signing the contract, the $24 million, and I'm not negotiating a long-term deal. So you have that $24 million, and now that second-round pick that you thought you should be able to get for a Bryce Huff ends up being maybe a fourth-round pick for Bryce Huff because you just got to get it off your cap. I think there's a real shot the Jets are going to let Huff leave for nothing, and I am devastated by it. I am so crushed that there was no foresight in this Bryce Huff conversation. Hopefully, we're wrong. He winds up staying, or the Jets find out a way to get a number 2 pick for him. I would love to get a second for him. 20 says, when did we fire Mike LaFleur? In other words, is there still hope that Carter goes? No, I think we fired LaFleur by this point already. I think Carter's locked in, unfortunately, unless something really goes sideways. Harlan says, I don't think Becton wants to come back to the Jets. Jets could try to sign him to a prove-it deal. So the one thing I will say about Becton, and I agree, I'm not sold that the Jets want him back. I'm not sold he wants to come back to the Jets. It feels like him and this coaching staff have never really clicked. But if there was a 1-year prove-it deal to be signed, it would make a lot of sense for Mekhi to do it here in New York, either with the Jets or with the Giants. One, because he doesn't have to move. He's got a young kid that was born, I believe it was this past offseason, 2 off seasons ago. So not having to move to a new city is enticing. Having a shot at a Super Bowl is enticing. Having Aaron Rodgers and that relationship you have is enticing. And if the Jets can get the benefit of a cheaper contract from him, maybe you consider it and just pencil it in as like, he's got to have a better year than last year. I don't know. He's got a ton of penalties and a ton of pressures. It's really not good. I do go over Becton in my 8 free agent offensive tackles that the Jets should consider. So you can take a look at my analysis on that one over there. Sean says, after all their misery, I want the Lions to win. Hopefully the Jets can then be inspired for a Super Bowl to win next year. Yeah, fingers crossed, my friend. J-Boy comes in with Super Chat. Thank you, J-Boy. He says, Baker making the Browns GM look so dumb. I love that the Browns look so stupid for trading for Deshaun Watson and giving up what they gave up, because Deshaun Watson hasn't done anything yet. And his contract's going to be like $64 million this upcoming season. And Baker balling out. Baker has had people bet against him his entire career. He was a walk-on at Texas Tech. No one believed in him. Oh, he can't be a number 1 overall pick. Oh, he goes number 1 overall. He winds up with a team in Cleveland who's been downtrodden forever. He is like the embodiment of what that city should have been, and they threw him out with the bathwater to bring in a serial pedophile. No, I shouldn't say. I'm not going to say that word, but a serial accused sexual assaulter or whatever in Deshaun Watson. 20 some odd cases against him. I don't know how. Look, the Browns have a really good team, so it's hard for me to rag on their GM too much, but man, they whiffed on Baker. They really did. I would have loved to have seen Baker stay there. Blitzkrieg says, so do you think Huff gets franchised, or are we looking at just a comp pick for him? I don't even know if we're going to get a comp pick for him, because the Jets are going to have to try and maneuver their signings. For those of you that are unaware, when a free agent leaves and signs with another team, you could get a compensation pick as high as a 3rd-round pick for the following year. So it'd be 2025 is the pick we're talking about. The highest you can get is a 3rd-round pick. It would be at the end of the 3rd round, or it could be any of the subsequent rounds after that. Now, the issue is if the Jets are going to try and sign free agents, that offsets the type of comp pick you can get. So if Bryce Huff is leaving, the Jets cannot sign free agents if they want a comp pick for him. I think the Jets are going to go all in this year. I think we're going to go after free agents to try and go all in. I don't think the compensation formula is going to work out for the Jets. So I think our only move is to franchise tag Huff and keep him here another year, or franchise tag him and get a trade worked out. I would absolutely apply the tag to Huff. I think it would be silly not to. Scott says trade JFM, keep Huff. I've seen that thrown around a little bit. I wouldn't mind it. I'm fine on that. I do like JFM though. So depending on if Huff really does want to leave, JFM might just be happier here. Even though Huff is the more critical piece right now, JFM may prove to be kind of more valuable because we have Will McDonald now. Wild Wave says, Ryan, I really think DJ, Huff, JFM, and Zach are our trade candidates. Yeah, look, unfortunately, we have had such a plethora of good defensive linemen and good secondary pieces. DJ Reed has been awesome. I would love to keep DJ Reed around, especially when you're going all in for a Super Bowl. I feel like him being moved would be a little surprising to me. I think after the season, if Douglas and Saleh are still here, you're more likely to get a trade of DJ Reed at that point than giving away a player that's in the upper echelon at his position in a year that these guys might be in their final season with the New York Jets. So I don't think DJ Reed's going anywhere. Huff, I think, could be traded. Zach is definitely going to get traded. JFM is probably on like the fringe there. Minion Troller, what do you think we do in the offseason? You're going to have to watch my mock offseasons when I put them out. Or maybe my free agent video that I just talked about with the tackles. Ryan S. They either should have traded down or put Zach on the bench, develop him behind a vet instead of throwing him into the fire. There's not a whole lot of data on like if quarterbacks sit versus if they start right away. Like there's plenty of quarterbacks that have success when they start right away, and there's plenty of quarterbacks that don't work out after sitting for a little bit. It's just like the obvious answer of looking at either Patrick Mahomes, who sat for a year, or the Packers, who have now done it twice. It's worked out both times. I think I would let our quarterback sit for a year or two because of the city we're in and the expectations that come with playing in New York. I think that is the best route for here, or you sign a veteran quarterback. I don't think New York is the spot you necessarily want to go starting quarterback immediately on a rookie deal. J-Boy says, you going live at 8? Yeah, I'll be live with Green Bean and O'Leary later tonight at 8 o'clock over on Talking Jets, so we'll talk a little bit more stuff over there. Nick says, Ryan, would you trade 10 and Huff for the 5th overall pick to get Alt or Fashanu at left tackle? I would consider it. I think it depends what happens in free agency. If you wind up getting a tackle you like in free agency, and the plan is to move AVT out to one of the other positions, and well, then I would probably want Huff traded for like a second round pick. I'd want a different player. But if you're telling me I could get the best offensive tackle, and I think Joe Alt is the best offensive tackle in this draft, I would trade Huff and number 10 to go get Joe Alt. I think that would be the move to make if it's on the table. He's going to have to sign that franchise tag, and you're going to have to carry that $24 million to the draft. That's going to be the part that's a little tougher. Sawyer says, I will die on this hill, but wide receiver is a bigger need than offensive tackle. Get Rome or Neighbors. I do think they're probably going to go with a weapon in the first round. I think there's a better likelihood of that player immediately impacting this team right now. And it's also a nod towards Aaron Rodgers. Like, hey, they never got you a weapon. Let's go get you another one. And I think Bowers is the one I would go with, because I think you can get a really good weapon in free agency. Not Patrick Surtain. Cortland Sutton from the Broncos. We have their wide receivers coach from last year, and we have Nathaniel Hackett. I don't know if there's any relationship there so much. But Cortland Sutton would be a player that I believe is going to get cut by the Broncos because of the dead cap hit that they're going to be getting from Russell Wilson. I would keep an eye on Cortland Sutton in free agency, and then I would keep an eye on Bowers in the draft. But you also have to take care of the offensive line, so you have to make sure you address that. There's far more interior offensive linemen in free agency, so I think AVT kicking out the tackle makes a lot of sense, even though a lot of people are not happy with that due to the injuries the last few years. But if you could bring in a Tyron Smith, a Michael Nwenwu or whatever from New England, or even a Jonah Williams from Cincinnati, we're going to have a few different options. Jets just got to make sure they pay for them. Young Freezy says, when the NFL doesn't make the Jets play the Packers during the regular season so they can play them during the postseason. Yeah, right. We'll have Packers-Jets Super Bowl. right? Because the Jets didn't finish the same level as the Packers. We're actually playing Minnesota. I'm predicting there's going to be a London game for the New York Jets next year. The Jets play the Jaguars and they play the Vikings. Both teams are set to have games in London next year. The Jets are projected to be, or not projected, the Jets are playing away for those two games. And I could see the NFL wanting the Jets to have another standalone game without it being a primetime game. So I bet we'll get the Black Friday game again. I bet we'll get a London game in conjunction with probably 3 primetime games. And then we'll have a flex option at the end of the season. I think that's what you wind up seeing next year. Cole says, it's a shame we never got a backup quarterback throughout the season and gave Zach the redshirt year that so that we wouldn't need to discuss drafting a quarterback. So I am of the belief, and I said this at the time we traded Rodgers, and there was blind hope for me with Zach Wilson. I think when you traded for Rodgers, the plan was always for Rodgers to play 3 years, and the plan was always to pretend like Rodgers was only going to be here for 1. So Zach was always going to be the heir. You were going to have this whole disguise of Zach's playing behind Rodgers. He looked great in training camp. He looked great in preseason, which was all true. And he was going to sit behind Rodgers all year. And then at the end of the season, Rodgers says, hey, I'm going to commit to 2 more seasons. And then the Jets are like, oh, well, look, I guess we have to trade Zach right now. And he's so much better than he was the last few years. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers. We're not getting rid of Zach because he's a bad quarterback or because he doesn't want to be here. We're getting rid of him because a franchise quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, is committing to the New York Jets long-term for 2 or 3 more seasons beyond Zach's rookie contract. It doesn't make sense for us to have him here. That was the best way for the Jets to recoup draft capital. And I fully believe that's why the backup quarterback wasn't fully gone with in the offseason. Because one, I think they were probably okay with Zach as the backup anyway. It just was a poor calculation. But yeah, I don't know what we get for Zach now. I think the plan was always to move Zach regardless of how this season ended up this offseason. Wild Wave says, Odunze compliments Garrett more with his size, but having 2 Garretts in Neighbors isn't bad either. Yeah, Neighbors is definitely more of a clone of Garrett Wilson, where Odunze is like 6'3" contested catch guy. I think Odunze compliments him really well. I would be very, very happy if we got him in the first round. Wild Wave says, for a guy like Becton to be this outspoken, he sure does suck. At least be like Garrett and be outspoken and good. Yeah, I like the way Sauce and Garrett have kind of handled the criticisms of the team, because they definitely put a lot of onus on themselves while also trying to hold people accountable. I hope both Becton and Garrett are here long term. I don't want to see like the nuclear option of the Jets season goes sideways next year and Garrett wants out and all that. That would crush me. Nick says, love Becton at right tackle, would sign Becton, veteran right guard, put AVT at left guard, trade up for Alt or Fashanu. So in my mind, I think there's a potential for Becton to come back as right tackle. I think AVT could kick out to one of the tackles. I would love to keep him at guard, ideally. But I would really like to bring in either Tyron Smith or Michael Nwenwu or even a Bakhtiari, someone like that, where you can still, I guess Nwenwu is a right tackle, so you could pencil him in at right tackle. But someone that could hold down left tackle for a year or two and gives you the option if Alt or Fashanu do fall. Because I think there's a real possibility Fashanu's there at 10. I think he does slip a little bit. And at that point, I would take him over Bowers or Odunze. I don't know. Trading up to 5 is an interesting process, though. Minion says, do you that Super Bowl logo next year indicates the 2 teams possible Super Bowl matchup, Jets, Vikings? Yeah, so I haven't seen the Super Bowl logo for next season yet, but what you're talking about, Minion, is the so purple and red. They're indicating that it's going to be Baltimore versus the 49ers, I guess is the theme, and the team with the least amount of color wins it. So they're saying the 49ers over the Ravens. That's the theory behind that. It's worked out like the last 3 logos that they've had. So if there's green in the logo, I'm loving it. Doesn't mean they can't change it. J-Boy says Baker on the Browns would be a Super Bowl team. I completely agree. Kenneth says, what is the situation where Alt falls to us in the draft? He's going to have to get a gas mask on immediately. He's not going to. Alt will not fall to the Jets at 10. I would be very surprised if that happened. I think he's going to. I think he's going to be the first offensive lineman taken. And I think he's going to wind up going 5. Scott says Blewett did a review on Fashanu. Doesn't think he's worth the 10 pick. Concerning. Yes, absolutely. Because I value Blewett's film review. And he was right on Evan Neal. And he was right. Oh, what was the other one? He had 2 that people were really sour on him about in the past. Evan Neal was one of them. Oh, damn it. I can't think of who the other player was that he was talking about. I'm going to have Blewett on here, actually. Him and I are working on a few collaborations. He was supposed to be on last night. I was going to do the Monday call-in show. I wound up not doing it because I was tired and wanted to watch the playoffs. But, yeah, Blewett and I are going to do some film review. And I'm excited to see what he has to say. Because if he's out on Fashanu, then that makes me lean more towards the weapon than for an offensive lineman. I know there's some rawness to Fashanu's game is what I've heard, but as far as left tackle, I don't mind having someone who's a little raw. And I would still take Fashanu if you solved offensive tackle via like vet in free agency. J-Boy says, what if Huff only balls under this D and they know it, so they are about to get a second, third, or something good, and he fades away? Yeah, that's fine. I'm cool with that. I think you have to trade Huff. I think that's just sort of the situation we've put ourselves in. I don't think you can really re-sign Huff to a contract. I think he's either playing on the franchise tag here or he's getting traded and hopefully we get a second-round pick for him. Wild Wave says, when DJ was out with a concussion, we were fine. Hell, we did well against the Eagles without both him and Sauce. Yeah, look, maybe you decide to retain Bryce Hall and you make a move with DJ Reed. I would just be surprised if Reed was moved this year. I think I would hold on to Reed this year and then look to maybe move him next offseason. I wouldn't give him a monster contract extension, but I would give him like a reworked deal so that way we get the benefit of the lower cap hit right now, and then you can trade him next offseason if you have to blow it up or if you're going to stay here long term and you want to build some pieces for the future. I think that's probably the move. It's not as crazy as people think, unfortunately. And I'm a big DJ Reed guy. I think he deserves to get a monster payday. Wild Wave also says, if we are trading for an offensive lineman, it's only with Atlanta or Chicago. It's way too much to go up for an offensive lineman when we have so many holes. Well, it depends. If Bryce Huff is deemed more valuable than giving up a draft pick for that other team, like if the Chargers are saying, hey, we're getting rid of Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, we got to rework his deal or whatever. Maybe they want Huff and also want a pick in the top 10. That could be more attractive than a team just giving up a straight up number 2 pick. So I could see it being like the Chargers at number 5. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Curly says, yeah, let's rely on AVT coming off an Achilles to play tackle. What could possibly go wrong? No, I don't think you rely on AVT to play tackle, but I think you pencil him in as your emergency tackle. Like you can feel a little more comfortable going with a high-end risky tackle like a Tyron Smith, who I'd lean more towards than Bakhtiari. But if you go with one of the high upside guys like that at left tackle and you bring back Mekhi Becton as right tackle, then at least AVT playing guard is your best offensive line. And if one of them goes down, you have the flexibility to move Becton to left tackle, AVT to right tackle. And I think you could still make things, still have things like go all right. I don't know how much the Achilles is going to hamper him to start. Like, is his jump off going to be that much slower? I don't know. Is he getting hurt because he's playing tackle? That's like another question that's fascinating for me. You know what? I should try to see if I could get a doctor on here. If I get a doctor on here to talk about this would be pretty interesting. Sean comes and says, question, would a veteran offensive line be wiser choice to protect Aaron Rodgers? I think so. I would go free agent offensive line and I would go a free agent wide receiver. And then I would go into the draft and I would try to do the same thing. I would go with a top end weapon in either a Bowers or an Odunze at number 10, and then try to fill out some offensive line a little bit later on. But yeah, I do think there's some noise there that would make a lot of sense. Curly, upset. Too many Jet fans have blind hope. I'm a show me kind of person. Talking about AVT moving to tackle. I think his financial status for his 5th year option might make it more attractive to put him at tackle. And I think he may just want it from like his own financial, side of things. My Holy King says Garrett Wilson will wind up leaving. If we don't have success next year, I think Garrett Wilson is going to get traded. And I think it'll be the new regime that ultimately ends up doing it. I don't know if it'll be his first year here or if he's going to play on that 4th year. But I think Garrett Wilson is an enormous trade chip that can net you multiple high draft picks. And I don't want to see him go anywhere, but I think if we don't have success next year, I do think he is going to be, I think a lot of our young players, like maybe not so much Sauce or Jermaine, but I think Breece and Garrett become tradable chips that I do not want to have to exercise. I want these guys being lifetime Jets here. I don't want to see them leaving. Mom says, was taking a look through tight ends drafted in round 1 since 2000. It's kind of scary seeing how many have sucked. Yeah, tight ends in the first round, generally not very good. Bowers is a little bit of a different beast. I haven't seen anyone like Bowers come out. Bill says, obvious standout in recent playoff games. You win with nasty offensive line. Yeah, you got to build that offensive line up. And having some health is just going to go a long way. Some consistency on the offensive line. We saw our offensive line and running game really go up a notch the final 3 games of the season with Breece. And maybe if you have guys that aren't necessarily, all-stars at their respective positions, but are steady starters. I think the Bills just had their first offensive lineman hurt for the season, which is bonkers to me. They've had the same 5 guys the entire year. That's why their offensive line is looking pretty solid. So maybe the sum of all parts is better than like just one individual piece. Joe Carp made a video about the logo. Not sure if it is true. Yeah, I saw Dan Mitchell made a video as well. I've seen a few people comment on this. Curly says, what pass rusher is hired taking it? I don't know what that means. Wild Wave, the problem with Fashanu is that he is extremely raw. You might not see your fruitions down the line. In a win-now mode, do you want to waste your time developing Olu, especially with Keith Carter? I think that's a valid criticism and a reason why I've been saying I think offensive weapon at number 10 is far more likely. I think Odunze and I think Bowers in particular, I think is in play because of where we had Mayer on our draft board last year. My Holy King says franchise tag Huff. I would like the franchise tag Huff purely from I don't want to lose, value in him. I think he's great when he's on the field with us. And if we have a quarterback that can get us elite, he's only going to look better, which means our draft capital could look even better. I would rather roll into next season and let him walk for nothing at the end of next year than allow him to walk for nothing this year. I think franchise tagging him is absolutely where you have to go with this. Cuke Lake says, you think for signing McGovern is a priority to be center 2 or put him back at center and kick Tittman to left guard if they dump Lakin. So I would keep Lakin on the roster until training camp. I think that's a smart move because his money isn't tied to any specific date in time. You can save just as much cap space if you cut him in March as if you were to cut him in August. So because of his health and because of his competition, I would hold on to him to training camp and let someone beat him. I would resign McGovern, whether it's to play center or to play guard. I'm good either way. I think it's valuable to have both McGovern and Tittman and Wes. All 3 of them know how to play guard and center. I think flexibility on the offensive line is so key. I would definitely want to bring him back. As far as him or Tittman playing center, I could go either way. I think Tittman looked good at guard, so you could kick him out that way. Maybe you move AVT over to the other side. Scott says, Bowers would complement Breece so well. Think about having Breece in the backfield. Bowers as a tight end with Conklin. 2 tight end sets. You have Ruckert as the fullback. Now all of a sudden you've got a lethal offense with Garrett Wilson. Maybe you bring in a good wide receiver in free agency. Cortland Sutton's going to get cut. Mike Evans, T. Higgins. Going to be some names. My Holy King says, get Jacoby Brissett. He's my top backup quarterback. I would be surprised if he left Washington or if he chose to come here with Rodgers committing to more than one season, but I would absolutely go get Jacoby Brissett. I think he has been so impressive from what he's had to deal with both the Colts and the Browns, with the weird Watson stuff going on. He's really a pro's pro. I like him a lot. I would bring him in a heartbeat. Joe says, Bowers isn't a tight end. He is a tight end, a slot receiver, a fullback, a bodyguard, a backup quarterback, and a running back. I completely agree, Joe. I think Bowers is far more than just the tight end that he's being labeled as. Hennessy says, if you tag Huff, it's an overpay. I agree. It is a drastic overpay. I think his contract is probably it should be probably somewhere between $12 and $15 million, realistically, on a one-year deal. The issue is how much are you willing to lose in a value? If you can franchise tag him and even get a 4th round pick, if that's what it is, that's still better than letting him walk for nothing and maybe getting a pick in 2025 when you're not here. I would overpay for Huff. The only thing is that tag went from $17 million when I initially made my mock offseason to $20 million, and now it's up to $24 million. So $24 million for Bryce Huff, that is tough. That is a tough ask. I don't think the Jets are going to. I would be surprised if the Jets tagged him. I hope they do, but I would be surprised if they did. Well, Wave says that's why you trade him. I agree, but you also tie up $24 million by doing that. And if Bryce Huff says, I'm not signing a long-term contract, I'm going to gamble on myself. $24 million playing with a lead with Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to earn myself a shit ton of money when you play me as many snaps as I'm going to wind up being played. If I was Huff, I would play hardball and I say, I am not signing a long-term extension. I want the tag. $24 million is life-changing money for an undrafted, for anyone, but for an undrafted free agent that didn't get a big contract, give me $24 million with a shot to get $100 million as opposed to taking maybe $30 million right now. Ryan S. says, with the 10th overall pick, the New York Jets select Donald McWill, edge, out of, I can't believe we did it. The opposite of Iowa. Curly says, was trying to say, what pass rusher is Joe D taking at number 10? God, I would be so mad. That was the one position I didn't want us to take at 15, and we fucking did it. Hennessy says 4 picks after us may be looking for a quarterback. We can trade down just a couple spots, get a 2nd round pick. That's a really nice route to go. You're looking at Denver. You're looking at maybe Las Vegas, possibly coming up. I would trade down and still take one of the tackles if you don't want to go with Bowers or Odunze. I think the Latham, Fuaga, and Mims, I'm kind of happy with any 3 of them, to be honest. I'm not as cold on Latham as a lot of Jet fans are. People see a big, heavy offensive tackle and they're scared. they see Mekhi Becton again. But all 3 of them, I'd be happy with any one of them. I think Mims has a massive upside, and I think Fuaga is probably the safest right now. Cuca Lake says, Bowers is Dalton Kincaid. Nice weapon to have. I thought Dalton Kincaid last year, you go back and look at my draft videos, I thought he had the best, I thought he was the best pass catcher coming out last year. And I think it's holding true with the exception of Laporta. Laporta is phenomenal. I think that has to do a lot with his offense that he's in as well, though. Sean says, have the football gods had enough inflicting injuries on us? I hope so, dude. Hennessy saying, Bowers is a luxury. It's like getting a sports car before having a house to live in. Is it, though? Is it? If you need another weapon and you have Garrett Wilson, who could be your, let's call him Tyreek Hill, and you have a tight end that could be your Travis Kelce, why not? Why not? You can do that. Especially if he's going to be able to block as well. It's almost like a 2 birds, 1 stone type of pick. That's where my thought process with him comes into play. Wild Live says, oh wait, the tag affects our cap even if we trade him. No, it doesn't, but it affects our cap until we trade him. So if you franchise tag him for $24 million and Huff says, I'm not working out a long-term deal right now, and he's just sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting and waiting and no team's trading for him, that's hurting your cap. Now you get to draft day and you say, fine, we'll take a 4th round pick. Now that $24 million comes off your cap, and you get the pick at that point in time. But it does tie up your cap until he's moved. Papa saying, not a lot of golfers today. No, definitely not a lot of golfers today. It is snowy up here in the Northeast. Kenneth says, please, Denver is not looking for a quarterback in the draft. They are already sending us a 6th-round pick in 2030 for Zach, who in turn will lead them to the playoffs. I do think they wind up making a trade for Zach. I think Sean Payton really liked Zach at one point, thought he could reclaim the starting spot last year. After he got benched, he thought there was a shot he could come back from that. I think there's some zest to him being able to make it work instead of Nathaniel Hackett being able to make it work. He already has success with a high upside quarterback that's maybe slightly smaller in stature, Breeze, coming over from San Diego at the time. I could see him trying to have lightning strike twice and getting Zach. And maybe they roll with Zach in a year. They're eating a bunch of dead cap from Russell Wilson's contract. You roll with Zach Wilson. If Zach bottoms out and he doesn't work out, you're going to get a top-end draft pick next year. So I think it makes a ton of sense for the Broncos to go after Zach. Cactus says if they take Bowers, they better be 100% certain he's Kelsey or Gonzalez level player. That's the risk, right? Like, because there's so many really good tight ends that wind up going between rounds like 3 and 6. It's just a matter of what percentage chance you have. Like, could you take 4 tight ends in the middle rounds over a bunch of years and none of them wind up working out? Or does Bowers have a 50-50 shot of either being like one of those tight ends that you would have gotten in the middle rounds, but a 50% chance of hitting like one of those top end tight ends? I think that's the gamble you're sort of taking here. Dane O says, you think our turf hurts us in free agent destination? Yes, I do. I think our free agency is going to hurt us from that perspective, as well as Keith Carter. I think offensive line, it's going to be tough. It is going to be tough for us to attract offensive linemen. I think we are going to have to overpay for players to come here. All right, boys, I want to hop off here. That was a good talk about the recap of those playoff games, where the Jets could potentially be going. I want to throw another shout out real quick. If you guys do want to support the channel in any way, you're having fun gambling on the playoffs, things of that nature, head over to Underdog Fantasy. Link is in the description down below. If you use promo code JETS247, it doesn't provide me a kickback, but it lets Underdog know that you guys are watching the show and you're getting your information from here and that it's worth it for them to sponsor the channel. So if you want to support the show, support the sponsor of the channel, Underdog Fantasy. Boys and girls, I will be back tonight, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock with the Talking Jets panel. Excited to get into all the questions you guys have for Matt O'Leary, Green Bean, and myself. This is Jets Talk, signing off. JETS.
One, two, three.